Hey, it's Mike Hambright with FlipNerd.com. Welcome back for another exciting VIP interview where I interview some of the most successful real estate investing experts and entrepreneurs in our industry to help you learn and grow. Today, I'm joined by Jason Roberts. He's a real estate investor, a speaker, a coach. He achieved great success in the mortgage industry at a very young age. And when 2007, 2008 hit, he was crushed financially. He's got a great story that he's going to share with us. And after that time, he dove into real estate investing and spent several years building his business. And from his mortgage business, he learned the power of building a team and really building a business. And so today, really his passion is teaching others how to build their real estate business in a way to where it serves you and not the other way around. So lots of people talk about how to successfully invest in real estate, but not enough talk about how to truly build a business that can allow you to step away from time to time and enjoy your life and enjoy all the reasons that you got into business in the first place. Before we get started with Jason, though, let's take a moment to recognize our featured sponsors. RealtyMogul.com is an online marketplace for real estate investing, connecting borrowers and capital from accredited and institutional investors. Get a rehab loan fast and close in as little as 10 days. Rates start as low as 9%. We'd also like to thank National Real Estate Insurance Group, the nation's leading provider of insurance to the residential real estate investor market. From individual properties to large-scale investors, National Real Estate Insurance Group is ready to serve you. Please note, the views and opinions expressed by the individuals in this program do not necessarily reflect those of FlipNerd.com or any of its partners, advertisers, or affiliates. Please consult professionals before making any investment or tax decisions, as real estate investing can be risky. Hey, Jason, welcome to the show.
How's it going, man?
Good. So, yeah, what's funny is that the topic we're going to talk about today is something that I'm very passionate about. I teach on this quite a bit myself, and it's really critical that if you want to be in a sustainable business, nobody gets into real estate investing to create a job for themselves. Everybody gets into it for, hopefully financial freedom, but also freedom from a time perspective.
Right.
Absolutely. But so many get trapped into just trying to do everything themselves and living transaction to transaction and never really building a business. So I'm glad we're going to talk about this today.
Me too, man.
Yeah,
Me too. I think it's a message that doesn't get shared enough.
That's true. Unfortunately, most people that are sharing messages have something to sell along with it.
Yeah.
And so it's more, unfortunately, it tends to be a lot more hype than, well, we'll talk about the business part of that later after you've bought my product. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But why don't you tell us your story? I think it gives a lot of great context to the message that we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. It's something that's become a little bit easier to talk about now that I'm 4 years past it. It was a lot more emotional story, but at a young age, I opened a mortgage company. I was 21, didn't know what I was doing, trying to decide whether going to college or work full time. And I had a job in the collection world that was paying decent, but it was a miserable place to be as a person. Just obviously calling people who haven't paid bills in a long time over and over. You can imagine how that feels after a couple of years of doing that.
Yeah.
And so I had some buddies that left and got into the mortgage industry and did financially well with that. And just not knowing any better, being a young kid. I had no experience running a business or anything like that, but I just sounded like a good idea, And next thing I know, we open up shop and we're doing a ton of loans. It was, if you remember 2001, it was kind of the start of the refi boom, and so we lucked into that. I didn't know what a refi boom was at 21. It just kind of a lot of business is timing sometimes.
Sure, yeah.
It was definitely timing and hard work there for sure. And that business got big. Like I said, it's about a $10 million a year business. We had about 100 employees, cranking loans out constantly. And, then we wake up one day in 2007 and the government says no more loans. All the banks, if you remember that, it's called the mortgage meltdown. Pretty much every major investor went out of business, and all the big Wall Street banks went out of business, and it drug me down, man. We were, give you a little bit of an idea, it was like 30 to 50 grand a month every single month that we were bleeding out. Just because all the employees left didn't mean I still didn't have the building and printers and copiers and staff and all. Those things don't go away just because you're not making money anymore.
I understand.
And about 2.5 years of losing money at that pace, and I found myself where so many other people find themselves. I was part of that foreclosure wave. I mean, I got to the point where do I pay my office bills or do I pay my personal bills? And I was still trying to feed the machine and hope that it came back to life. And house repossessed, or foreclosed on, cars repoed, forced me to file Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And so, into 2010, I'm finding myself really with nowhere to live, no car to drive, not knowing how I'm going to eat, from just not too long ago being able to kind of endlessly spend and never have to look at a checking account balance or wonder, if there was money there or not, to hoping my debit card goes through for groceries, Right. It was a big change, big adjustment period, man. And so here I am, 2010, I'm 30 years old. I'm wiped out. I don't have an education, I mean, my education came from running the business, but in the scheme of things, I'm not going to go get a job, to replace that kind of income.
Right.
And I was one of those guys that bought a course, man. I heard you've had Sean McCloskey on the show before.
Yeah.
Sean, first and only 4-day boot camp that he's ever done for free before or since. It was the only one he ever did, and it was the only reason I was there because I wouldn't have had any money to attend. I mean, it was literally the same month that my Chapter 7 went through. When I speak at the front of the room, I show my Chapter 7 discharge, and it's October 2010, and that was the month of the event.
Wow.
And he was teaching on the short sale business. And while I didn't necessarily have experience in real estate investing, I did have experience, like you said, with putting systems into place and running a business.
Yeah.
So, just that very next year, 2011, we flipped over 100 houses, something like $3.6 million gross profit.
That's incredible.
It was just dove right back into it, man, and I had a lot of things to pay back and a lot of time to catch back up on, man.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a wild story of, I share it because I think that a lot of times I run into people who are in that wiped out place, or you hear about real estate investing and you hear these people from the front of the room that say you can do this with no money and no credit and I'm one of those guys that's sitting in the crowd saying, yeah, freaking right. How can you borrow $100,000 to buy a house that's worth $150 if you've got a 400 credit score and a Chapter 7 bankruptcy?
Right.
So I share it to give people context that you can. I mean, you find the deal and the money appears.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. I know that's a difficult story. I think one of the things that has been interesting to me over the last few years, some of it came from some. I won't get into the details, but just some other people that I know that are really successful. Is I think what's interesting is, and you may have a different context now that you've been through it, but I think it's important as an entrepreneur to be successful. And not that you wouldn't do things differently. I'm sure you would, and I'd like to hear from that. But it's the ability to almost constantly, you want to keep yourself safe, like keep a nest egg aside,
Sure.
but the ability to constantly be able to bounce back from a failure like that, which starts to get you to a point to where you just kind of go all in on everything because that's who you are. And you know that just like you did, is if I fail, I know I can come back from it. That's people's biggest fear is I'm going to get wiped out and I can't come back. Yeah. And I think it's a different mentality when you know I could lose everything today and I'll be back in a year.
Well, you're right. And that's the that in itself is also what prevents people from ever being successful in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't dip one foot in and see what happens. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
It is a burn the boats behind you mentality that there's no retreating. If you leave yourself a backup plan, you'll end up taking it.
Yeah.
And I think as an entrepreneur, once you kind of get, it's like the more mistakes I make, the faster I get to the finish line. So I'm okay with those mistakes along the path.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before we get into talking about the topic of the day, which is building a business and really treating your real estate investing business like a business that can run, without you potentially, at least for short periods of time. Well, can you share some of the lessons that you learned from the failure that you had, which you kind of were probably taken off guard, to what we just talked about is losing the fear of failing again, but knowing that you could come back if you have to?
Yeah. Man, I have to say probably one of the biggest things for me, going forward and what I learned through that is that I will never be a slave to a lender again. I will never, no part of my life there, I'm completely debt free. I don't owe a dime on anything. I like nice stuff, but my mentality is different now. If you want $100,000 car, most people think, well, I only have to come up with an $1,800 a month payment, so the subconscious finds a way to make $1,800. If I say that I want a $100,000 car, but I have to write a check for it, then the subconscious finds a way to find a lump sum of $100,000. And it's such a small mind shift, but man, it makes all the difference in the world. It's kind of like that red car theory. You drive down the highway and look for a red car, and you see 1,000 of them, but you never saw it before. You would have never seen them had you not paid attention to it.
Right.
Or the kind of Tony Robbins where he says, close your eye, or look around the room and look for everything green. Now close your eyes and tell me everything you saw that was brown. And you can't really remember a single thing.
Right.
It's kind of that subconscious thing a little bit that I just getting to work with all the people that I work with, on a coaching basis now across the country. Debt is the number one thing that I see that prevents people from being able to take that chance. I mean, you're working your full-time job and you want to move over and doing something for yourself full-time, but you've got mortgage, you've got car payments, you got credit cards, you have student loans, you have $6,000 a month worth of stuff that you have to pay. And so you say, well, I can't quit that job. It's now golden handcuffs. It's now, 6 hours of your 8-hour days going to Wells Fargo and an hour and a half going to Ford Motor Credit and
right. Which is interesting because all of your early success was from basically selling debt.
It was absolutely that. Absolutely that. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Great.
It's not for me anymore though, man.
Yeah. Well, I know you office with Sean. For those of you that don't, for those that are listening that didn't see the interview with Sean McCloskey of Life on Air, you should check it out. He's got a great book and a great program to teach people how to be a real estate investor and actually not kind of tie yourself to debt. So, great,
life-changing stuff.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the fundamentals that you see. A lot of real estate investors, we see the same thing, where they start a business or they call it a business, but it's not really a business because they are the person that's doing everything. And if they stop doing any of those things, the business stops. That instant. So kind of give some context to the importance of that.
Yeah, I think that I brought up earlier, but for those of you guys that haven't read the book, The E-Myth, there's so much to the story about the woman who's the baker, and she works for the bakery, and there's a line out the door and around the corner of all these people that come to this bakery because of this woman who's a fantastic baker. And so all of her friends and family are saying, hey, you should open up your own bakery. You're making the man all this money, open up your own thing. And so she goes and opens up her own shop. But what she doesn't realize is now she's not only the baker, but she's HR, she's payroll, she's sweeping floors, she's cleaning bathrooms, she's ordering dough, she's paying electric bills. You're doing all these other things that you didn't necessarily take into account. And I think that's one of the bigger things that I see when I do coaching consulting work for people is that I think that there's so many people that are selling courses from the front of the room on how to do wholesales, how to do short sale, how to do this, how to do that. But if you don't have the structure of the business, it's very, very difficult to make any of that work because no one's teaching you the structure of it. They're just saying, do these things. Well, for whatever reason, when we're in that job mentality, we show up to work and someone tells us what to do, right? I mean, here's what you're expected to do today. Here's the deadline of what I need tomorrow.
Right.
When we go out on our own, man, there's nobody telling us to do anything anymore, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we wake up and it's kind of like, what should I do today? Maybe I'll send some letters. No, I don't really feel like doing letters. Maybe I'll, look up some stuff on the MLS. There's no measure. There's no scorekeeping. There's no deadlines. It's kind of free for all.
Yep.
And it makes it. That's why a lot of real estate investors fail because there's no measurable, moving forward things to track on a daily basis. Like in your business, you should know how many phone calls do I need to make a day to yield me how many appointments? How many appointments yield me how many contracts? How many contracts yield me how many closings? How many closings yield me X amount of dollars? And know that if I want to do 3 closings a month, that equals 453 outbound calls that have to be made.
Right.
If you don't know those numbers in your business, you're running blind.
Yeah.
And you're doing it by luck. And real companies, real businesses, they don't operate by luck. They know those numbers. They know those statistics,
Yeah. And the most important thing in real estate is, from that perspective, is that in my experience, we get deals all the time that we made our first offer on 6 months ago, even I bought houses up to 3 years after my first offer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if I hadn't put that in the pipe 3 years ago, it wouldn't be coming out now. And I think so many real estate investors are so short-sighted as to what can I do today to make money tomorrow? And the cycle just isn't that fast.
It's not that game.
Yeah. So I think it's tough for a lot of people that want to get in, and they don't realize that I need to be doing stuff right now, and I know that that's going to pay off many months down the line, but it's important that I do it now, otherwise I'm going to suffer later.
Absolutely. And that kind of plays back into that, assembly line part of things. When you break that business down and understand what has to be done, if marketing is a component of any business, and if you look at any real company out there in the world besides some of our own little, personal real estate investing companies, you've got a company like McDonald's that they don't say, man, I don't really feel like marketing today.
Yeah.
They've got a marketing division, a marketing team, and they're constantly putting stuff out constantly. Any real company, whether it's Coca-Cola or, company down the street, any successful business has marketing going every day. We look at our own real estate investing business, and it's, I don't feel like doing marketing today. Or maybe you did marketing yesterday and the phone starts ringing today. So now today you're out running appointments and you don't have time to get the marketing done. And now you're, experiencing this roller coaster of income.
Or probably more typical for a lot of investors is they don't have the money to market, to send out advertising right now.
Yeah.
They're not reinvesting their profits,
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's get into some of the stuff about truly building a business and laying this out, some of the framework that people need to follow.
Yep. I think for me, one of the first things that I do when I sit down with people is I've got a big 16-foot glass whiteboard in my office, so I've got a ton of space to kind of break this down. But I always kind of do two parts to start with. And the first one is just kind of do a big mind map, So you draw a circle in the middle and you say, what puts the money in the bank account, So is it a closing? Is it, are you doing lease options? So it's when the option contract gets signed. And so you've got the transaction that actually happens that puts the money in the bank. That's the center point of it, right? I mean, that's the nucleus of it. And then we just start drawing all these little things, all these little lines out from the center of everything that has to happen to take it from ground one. I mean, from pulling a list to writing letters to making marketing calls to making offers to searching MLS to whatever you're doing in your business. And we're just kind of free writing it all over on the board. Every single thing that we can possibly think of, from paying your accountant to cashing the check to every single part of that process from start to finish that has to happen in order for the check to get cashed. Okay. And so we're just throwing stuff out there. And then on the second side, we'll take all those things and turn it into an assembly line, like blocks. Like block one might be, we've got all that stuff on the board. What's the very first thing that has to happen to get this business going? It's typically always marketing, right? Mm-hmm. So the first block is marketing, and then under marketing, then we're going to start listing out every single thing that has to be done for marketing. And it's different for every type of real estate investing, but, it might be bandit signs. And then under bandit signs, it's, need 30 bandit signs to be put out on Friday each week and picked up on Monday. Then we've got, Craigslist ads. We've got to run 3 ads a day and these specific things. And we start writing out the job description of everything that has to happen for marketing to be done correctly. Not necessarily how we're doing it now, halfway, how it needs to be done if the business is going to run successfully.
Yep.
And, and then step 2 might be, pre-screening the homeowner and every single step that has to be done with that. And then the third one might be, getting the contract signed, everything that has to happen with that. And then the closing, everything that has to happen with that. And then, then you've got your next step, which is either your rehab or your wholesale or whatever. And then you're marketing the property again. And so you'll have 6 or 7 blocks across the wall of the main foundation stuff that has to happen. And then there's 50 things under each of those blocks that have to take place. And almost every single time I do this, people sit back and say, oh my gosh, that's a lot of stuff. No wonder this doesn't get done.
Right.
It's too much.
Yeah.
It's way too much for one person. But what we have to get out of the mindset of, and remember is that you need a team. You need, if you're going to run any successful business to where you're working on it instead of in it, you've got to have other people helping you do the job. And the point of this exercise is to make that assembly line and then say, how do I get myself off of the assembly line?
Right.
I'm not allowed to do any of these things on the assembly line, so who the heck's going to do it? Well, I'm broke. I don't have any money to pay any of these people. Okay, so how can we get people to do work without having to pay them up front? And start asking some of those right questions, because one great avenue is a realtor. Realtors aren't used to getting paid up front. They get paid out of closing, right? So what what if we give a little bit more commission, but the realtor takes on 30% of those jobs? And what if we find, somebody, our local RIA or something, who's a real estate investor, and maybe they have money, but they need a mentor or somebody to teach them, or maybe they're new into it and they're willing to do some of the work in exchange for 20% of the net profit. And now you're able to structure and build a team where you may only end up with half of the deal at the end, but if you're not doing any of the work,
right?
I've got 5 different companies. I work 2 hours a day, and it's because I'm not cutting the grass. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm doing what I'm good at doing and letting other people do what they're really good at doing.
Yeah, and you spend your time finding people to put in those places.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. And the next step from that is, I always kind of teach 3 things. You've got the artist / technician. That's the baker in the E-Myth story. That is your top sales guy at a company. That is, the artist, the technician person is more interested in their art than they are running a business or a company.
Yeah.
And then you have, the second person that you have is a manager, and the manager is the one who is good at running teams and good at keeping things organized and making things move, but they're not necessarily good at any of the particular tasks. They're fantastically organized at making sure all the people who are doing the task are getting them done.
Right.
And then you have the entrepreneur, who is the one that thinks of the new business that needs to get created. And so one of the first things I do with people is try to help them decide which one of those they are.
Right.
Because we're all kind of, not that we don't move, as business owners, that we don't move from one to the other, but at the end of the day, our core value, our core who we are kind of defaults to one of those. And if you're the artist entrepreneur, you need to know that, so that you know that you have to have a manager that gets put in place, and you need the entrepreneur to be put in place so that you can do your art.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about for there's a lot of obviously new real estate investors or people that have had interest in it for a long time that have reasons why they haven't gotten started. Usually it has to do with either time or money, and money is almost always an issue. But talk about how to build a team and a process like that when you have no experience and no credibility.
Yep. Good question. I
only ask good questions, Jason.
Yeah, that apparently is not your first interview. Right? So I think that the first thing that you have to do is do that exercise. Credibility comes from knowing what you're talking about, not necessarily how long you've been doing it or how many times you've done it, but just being able to explain it in a way you understand. And if you don't understand your business broken down at its simplest point, it's going to be hard for you to recruit anybody. So I would start with that whiteboard type exercise so that start to finish what has to be done, so that when you're starting to build that team, you can sit down and look and say, look, there's 233 things that have to happen to take us from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And I need somebody to do these 32 things. And here's how it's going to look, and here's what it's going to do, and here's what I'm willing to do compensation-wise. And knowing what type of, when we do this exercise, when I take people and other people come up for, a half day or a whole day here at the office and break their business down and kind of put it back together, and we go through and I start to identify, okay, here's all the stuff that needs to get done for marketing. I can't honestly say it's the entrepreneur's highest and best time to write out 200 letters a day. It's just not. So who can we find to write out 200 letters a day, and what kind of qualities would they have? And then, we go to the next block and say, okay, we need somebody to take all the inbound calls and set the appointments to go look at the houses. What kind of characteristics or qualities would the person have that's going to be, making those type of phone calls and talking to the person on the phone? I had a lady come up who had us take her whole business apart and put it back down. She's from Phoenix, Arizona. And she went down and put it all back into place. And she said, Jason, everything else is working, but marketing's working. Everything that you guys taught me, it's firing on all cylinders. But no, I'm getting 15, 20 calls a day from people who want to sell their houses, but I can't set a single appointment. This doesn't work. I'm mad. You told me this would work, and it doesn't. She's all upset. And we sent her this thing called the DISC test. I don't know if you've heard of it, like a DISC profile. It's a personality assessment test, but it's a free one that you can find out there, and it's DISC, and the I means like interaction, how well of a communicator you are, and so we gave her the test, and she came back. She was like a 0 on the I, and we said, well, who's taking the phone call? She says, I am. Well, we've got the person with the worst people skills on the entire face of the earth that's handling our sales calls. Right? But I mean, she didn't see that on her own. It took somebody on the outside looking in to say, we figured that out in 10 seconds, But it's those kind of little things that when we're running our own business, I always say, you know, the biggest roadblock to any of our businesses, any of us that have any business in the world, the biggest roadblock is the leader's, you know, leader's ability to delegate and the leader's ability to be conscious of what their strengths and weaknesses are. We're always the bottleneck of our own company.
Yep.
It's figuring out that we're the bottleneck and saying, how can I get myself out of my own way?
Right.
You know, and in that case, she was, you know, directly in her own way. So we put somebody that had a high eye in that place, somebody that loved to talk to people and loved to make phone calls, and all of a sudden she's closing deals like crazy.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes it's really simple stuff like that, but man, it's also a big deal.
Yeah, it's, you know, I coach and mentor a lot of folks too, and we always talk about what are your strengths and weaknesses, and we use a different personality profile test, but it's very similar. That tries to show people where they're not. It's not strengths and weaknesses. It's so much kind of your tendencies and what are you good at, what are you typically not good at, and it's really important to focus on the things to really self-diagnose yourself and find the things that you're not good at, because so many people that are nobody sits around and generally it's not human nature to sit around and say, what am I not good at, because you want to think you're good at everything.
That's right. Well, and you're right, and we take for granted too that, you know, when we're working in a corporation that's got 1,000 employees, we don't have to make those decisions.
Right.
Someone else is making them. We just show up and do what we're supposed to do. Well, someone else already made the decision that this guy's pretty good at this stuff, so I'm going to keep him right here.
Right.
But when we're the guy right there, you know, those are all little things that we just don't learn.
Yeah, yeah. Talk a little bit about, from the context of everything we just talked about, of kind of building out a team, about how potential partnerships fit into that, and also the context of finding somebody that kind of complements your strengths and fills the gap with your weaknesses and things like that.
Absolutely, man. And I think a lot of real estate investors, they kind of start with that partnership thing, and then the partnerships fail because of exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
There's no, hey, let's do this business together. Okay, great. Let's send some letters out. You know, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
I take everything back to that whiteboard exercise and break it all back down and say, okay, here's the 200 things that have to happen for this business to run. You take the red marker, I'll take the blue marker. I'm going to go circle everything that I love to do and that I feel like I'm good at, and you start circling the stuff that you love to do and think that you're good at, and then let's see what we've got left. You know, if we both go up to the board and we all circle the same thing, that may or may not be a good recipe for a partnership.
Right.
You know, and it happens often, but what you'll also find happens a lot too is that you'll have complementing. You know, we're always attracted to opposites. You know, my business partner that's been my business partner now for, since 2001, her name's Rachel. Brilliant girl. I'm 99D, 99I, like a 0S, 0C, right, on that disc test. She's like, you know, middle to low D, middle to low I, but she's super, super high on the S and the C. So we kind of call it the front of the business and the back of the business. I handle the front end stuff. I'm the one that's talking to people, networking, bringing business in, bringing deals in, talking to homeowners. You know what I mean? Doing the front end kind of stuff.
Yep.
I am an absolute train wreck with paperwork and stacking. I mean, when we started the short sale business, I remember her coming into my office one day, and she's like, "Jason, you're going on 3 or 4 appointments a day. It's been a week and a half, and you haven't turned a single file in." And then I see her eyes look over, and she's like, "Oh my God, you are an absolute mess." And I've got a stack of file folders, you know, 4 feet tall on my desk of all these signed packages that I brought back, but she wanted them stacked in a 5-sided folder with pay stubs over here and bank statements over here.
Yeah.
And I'd rather jump off a cliff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yet, when we're in our own businesses, a lot of times I hate doing the marketing. I freaking hate it. So I'm just not going to do it today. I'll get busy and do some busy work somewhere else over here. And then you wonder, you know, it's the difference from people who are really, really successful and the ones who don't make it is their ability to stay consistent on the day-to-day.
Yeah.
Marketing's got to happen every single day. It can't happen one out of 3 days or 1 out of 4 days. It's got to happen every single day, just like an assembly line. You know, Ford doesn't shut down their assembly line when somebody decides that they don't want to build cars today. You know, I mean, that thing's rolling 24/7 and it punches out a product.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe talk a little bit about, I know that just the fact of thinking of your business the way that you're talking about it, of a production line, and thinking, I can't do all this. Maybe I shouldn't do any of it. I need to put people in place to do that.
Yeah.
Just going to that step is showing a lot more commitment than, well, I'm going to try this real estate thing and I'm not going to think through my business from that perspective.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is when I first kind of went through what I went through when I met Sean, and I sat down with Steve Cook, and who you probably had on here, and Sean, and Steve looked at me and he goes, Jason, I think it's really cool that you know how to build these businesses and make a lot of money. That's a really cool talent. He said, but you're working 16 hours a day, man. Anybody can do that if they want to work 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
He wasn't talking down to me. He was doing it on purpose because he knew he had to check my ego. He had to get me mad enough that I'd want to change. And he's like, he goes, so actually, I don't really think it's cool at all. He said, he goes, what I would think is really cool is if you could figure out how to make those businesses make the same amount of money, but you only had to work an hour or two a day. And my first thing is, who the hell's this guy telling me what, so, but then when he left, I got to thinking, I'm like, that's kind of felt like a challenge to me. Why can't I figure out how to make the business do the exact same thing in an hour or two a day of my time instead of 12 hours a day of my time?
Yeah.
Well, when you do that, it's kind of like, the syndrome of you're going on vacation tomorrow and you get 100 times more done the day before vacation than you did the last 3 weeks put together.
Yeah.
It's kind of that thing, I know every day I've got 2 hours worth of work that I can get done. And so guess what gets done? The most important things. And guess what else gets done? I have to be a really, really good delegator because I'm not going to allot 12 hours a day. Well, this is so important for the people who are working full-time jobs that only have an hour or two a day with kids and families and husbands and wives and soccer and 50-hour work week. They may only have an hour or two a day to invest in their business. So they have to do this exercise or they're never going to make it.
Right.
They have to figure out a way to delegate a lot of those things out. So, I get on coaching calls with guys saying, I spent 4 hours last night handwriting letters. You can have somebody write letters for $8 an hour, what I mean? Or you can have somebody you can have a virtual assistant on Odesk pull your data for you for $1.50 an hour, or you can sit and type into an Excel spreadsheet every single evening and want to kill yourself. I mean, it's a lot of little things like that, man, that make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, and this is the type of business where lots of little things tend to come up. So you've got to have somebody that has that responsibility. I would love to get your thought on building a business that allows you to not work as hard as everybody else, but still being that leader that people look at. So just talk about the dynamic in an office or in a setting where you have this expectation that somebody else needs to be working 8-10 hours a day, whatever it is, and you're kind of walking out like, I'm done for the day at 11 a.m. I'll see you later. How do you motivate people to work so hard for you?
I'm glad that you asked that because my story from before when the mortgage company was there, I mean, I literally was the first one to leave, last one to go home. I was there at 6 in the morning. I'd leave at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, year after year, day after day, month after month, year after year. And so I remember back then, man, if I went to lunch, if I took a lunch break, I had this extreme anxiety. I felt guilty. I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm walking out. Everybody else is still working. And I know that sounds crazy because I'm paying all these people and I'm paying them really, really well. Why do I feel guilty giving them work to do when I'm paying them to do it? And so that was really, really tough for me. Yeah. Starting over when I sat down and really started looking through what do I really want my life to look like. And, the gym and exercising is important to me and having fun and doing things that I enjoy doing. I'm taking helicopter. There's all these different things that I want to do that only allot me a 20-hour work week now, or you know what I mean?
Yep.
And if I'm going to only work 15, 20 hours a week, other things have to get done. One of the things, though, I do, man, is no one on my team works probably more than 20, 25 hours a week. So I'm not asking them to do much more than what I'm bringing to the table myself. Okay. So I do a good job of identifying people who have a really unique skill set for the things that need to be done. And then I tell them, look, I don't want you slaving away at this. I want you working, 3-4 hours a day, 5 hours a day. That's it. If we need more help than that, then we'll find someone else. And I think that I'm glad you asked this because I think that people mold their business based on who can do the job for them, and that's so backwards. You have to clearly define exactly what those roles look like, and then find the person that fits inside of that box, not the other way around. So we make our box, and the person says, well, I can't work on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I needed someone on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I say, you know what, let's just do Monday and Wednesday then. And so now I'm changing my whole business around for someone else.
Right.
And that's the wrong way. The right way is there are so many fantastic, qualified, quality people out there right now that would love the opportunity to work, and also just understand the psychology of what motivates people. Just because we're motivated by money doesn't mean the rest of us are. My assistant, who is probably out of hundreds and hundreds of employees, probably the best employee that I've ever had and running any business right now. And she's zero motivated by money. We were just in here earlier working on some stuff, and she joked because she has to track her hours, and she hates to track her hours. And so whatever hours she turns in, I pay her for twice as many hours because I know she's not writing down all the hours that she's really working. So whatever she turns in, 50 hours for the month, I pay her for 100. Well, now she feels guilty about that, and she said, she loves like scrapbooking. She's a stay-at-home mom, but she's genius smart, and she's fantastic. But she's joking around saying, "How about you just give me a $50 a month salary, and you and Sean got to come to a scrapbooking class once a month with me?" Because that's what she loves to do. You know what I mean? Her heart's in a different place. It's not money that she gets self-worth from. It's time. It's other things. And we always think that somebody with these skill sets is going to cost a fortune of money. There's a lot of really awesome people out there that get their self-worth from other places than just a paycheck. They'd rather be part of a team, or they'd rather contribute, or they'd rather give, or they'd rather grow, or they'd rather help. And that means more to them than a paycheck does. They don't care about the money.
Yeah.
We just, being in this space, our number one, this business attracts a lot of money-hungry people. What else can you spend a couple hours on and make a $30,000 check?
Yeah.
So it attracts people who are focused by money a lot in the beginning. Sometimes we forget the rest of the world isn't necessarily like that.
Yeah, I found just in my experience, a lot of times I've had people that start to feel like the owners are the ones making all the money, which of course they don't understand. Hey, maybe there's months where we lose tens of thousands of dollars because we still have overhead. They never see that side, and they tend to see the sales number. Hey, you sold a $300,000 house. It's like, yeah, but I didn't make $300,000.
That's right.
And by the way, I had all these holding costs and other expenses. And I have in my experience, I have people at the administrator level that I feel start to feel like they're doing a lot of work and the lowest paid person on the team. And that's why I asked that, was not so much, for myself personally, is how to, how to try to find people that feel like they're part of the team, but don't feel like they're getting the short end of the stick, if you will.
Yep. No, I think it's a great question. I think, just to kind of reiterate it comes down to finding that right person and rewarding them in the way that they understand reward. You know what I mean? Yeah. We do a lot of fun stuff outside of work. I mean, we'll get here on a Tuesday and somebody will say, just a couple of weeks ago, a guy came in for a coaching session. My assistant's here, Sean was here, Rachel was here, and he goes, I was going to come in for a coaching session, but I decided to take you guys all skydiving, and our whole office shuts down, and we all go skydiving today. You know what I mean? And it's stuff like that means more to people than work and money and stuff all the time. And so then when they are working, man, they're working that much harder because they know that let's get the stuff done because tomorrow we might go do something fun again, or we'll go play paintball on a Friday, or you know what I mean? There's a lot of meeting people's needs in other ways than just financially.
Yeah,
and
that's great.
Not everybody's motivated that way. You know what I mean? If you find somebody who's looking for, only financial motivation, working in an environment with me might not be the right fit right now because it's a priority to me, but it's not number one.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Well, hey, I wish we had more time to talk a lot more about this. This is such an important topic, but thanks for sharing your insights and spending some time with us today.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Jason. So if people want to learn more about some of the work you do, I know you have some coaching programs and you have some things coming up. Where do they go to learn more?
Man, they can hop on the website. It's www.jasonroberts.tv. Not .com, just .tv. So www.jasonroberts.tv. There's a little box that'll pop up that offer a little free 30-minute coaching session or something like that.
Okay,
and
awesome.
Be happy to talk.
We'll add a link down below the video too. So, hey, thanks again for spending some time with us today. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Stay in touch, my friend.
All right. Take care.
Are you a member of FlipNerd.com, the most robust real estate investing platform in existence, where you can find off-market wholesale deals and great vendors literally in your market? You can get access to advice from experts and learn about local clubs and events right in your backyard. If not, please visit FlipNerd.com and register for a free account. You can register in less than a minute. It's pretty much the coolest site that's ever existed in the real estate investing industry, so get on over to FlipNerd.com.